Sure. Okay. So today we are doing our 10th session, Vedānga Jyotisham, right? So let's get started. Let's start with the Mangalacharanam. Namaste Sharade Devi Kashmirapurvasini Tvamaham Prathaye Nityam Vidyadanam Cha Dehi Me. Yeah, so today we already covered Chandas introduction last time. So today we're doing Jyotisham. And I'm thinking next session we can probably combine multiple topics together and probably try to close Vedangas sooner. Okay, so what is Jyotisham? I will explain in English as well, though the text is in Sanskritam. So Jyotisham graha nakshatrani adhikritya kritam shastram iti Jyotisham. So it is that which is based on nakshatras and grahas. We will look at what is the definition, lakshana of graha and nakshatra, which is often incorrectly translated in English. But again, just as a reminder, why we are doing Vedanga as important topic of source of our knowledge system is, as you can see, Shiksha, Vyakaranam, Chando, Niruktam, Jyotisham Tatha, Kalpascheti Shadangani, Vedasya Ahuhu, Manishinaha. Okay, so it's saying these are the 6 angas of the Vedas. And in Prashna Marga, you will see Chandaha Padau, Shabda Shastram cha, Vakram Kalpaha, Pani Jyotisham Chakshushi cha, Shiksha Ghranam, Shrotra Muktam, Niruktam Vedasya Angani, Evam Ahuhu Munindraha. So here it's saying that the Chandas is the pada, the feet, the Jyotisha is the eyes. So again, it's a metaphor here, right? And we saw already how Chandas, how important Chandas is. It is the basis of so much of the mathematics. It is the basis of literally all the singing and the chanting that you can do in Sanskritam. And now we will look at Jyotisham, which is the eye. Again, it's a metaphor. Why is it the eye? Because it is based on astronomy. It's based on being able to see the grahas, the nakshatras, making calculations. It is also about knowing when to do the yaga. So how do you know when to do the yaga? You have to look at the sky, you have to observe and then come to an understanding of calculation of time. So it is the eye. So Vedanga Jyotisha, the Rachayita is supposed to be Lagadha. So if you call like Sushruta, the father of plastic surgery, then you can say Jyotisha Vedanga Jyotisha. You can say in that same kind of terminology, Lagadha should get that status. So now with that, let us understand the Pravartaka. Now, always in traditional Shastras, it is there is always a very clear parampara, Guru parampara, which is given in our text. It's just that the typical historians do not take it seriously and they like disregard it because it doesn't match whatever timelines they have developed. So, for example, even Kautilya's Arthashastra, we keep saying Arthashastra by Kautilya and we date him. But if you see his text actually is quoting multiple people before. There are Arthashastra which existed before him and he acknowledges it. He even refers to some quotes from those verses by those other acharyas and then either agrees or disagrees with them. So, there is like a citation process that's going, and it is the one that we are currently referring to as Arthashastra is one among a longer parampara of that knowledge system. Likewise, Jyotisham, as we know today, exists because of contributions of all these people who kept passing on from one guru to the next shishya and so on and so forth. So it is traditionally supposed to start with Surya. Okay. So it starts with Surya, who's teaching Pitamaha. Now you might wonder who's this Pitamaha? Is it Bhishma Pitamaha? No, actually Pitamaha here refers to Brahma. So Brahma learns it from Surya and then he teaches it to Vyasa, then who teaches it to Vasishtha, who teaches it to Atri, then Parasharam Rishi, Muni, then Kashyapa Rishi, then Narada Muni, then Garga, then Marichi, who is actually an Asura if I'm not wrong, and then you have Manuhu, okay, the same Manu from which you get Manuswati. Then you get Angiraha, which is Angirasa Kula. Then you have Lomashaha, Paulishaha, Chavanaha, you get Chavanprash actually from this Rishi. Then you have Yavanaha, and then you have Bhrigu and Shaunaka. Now you might think, what is this Yavanaha? So now let's explain. Yavanaha, typically there are multiple meanings. One Yavanaha meaning is Greeks. And why does that meaning come? Because in English, or what you will see is Greece's islands are around the Ionian Sea. So that Ionian Sea must have become Yavana in Sanskritam. So there were interactions with Greeks in the past, and they were referred to as Yavana. But one thing to note is that even the Persians are sometimes known as Yavanas. Now, again, you could explain that by saying there was a point when Greeks did mingle with Persians, and there were Indo-Greek kings, so maybe because of that. But on top of that, there are more things. So, for example, Yavana also means a swift horse. It can also mean wheat, okay, and it can also mean something which is mixed. And Yavanal is a sorghum, the crop, and then Yavana Dvishta is the gugul tree. Okay, so it's obviously more complicated than that. Now, typically, it is assumed that the fact that Yavana is mentioned here means that the Greeks introduced certain things into Jyotisham. Now, it is possible, but as I already mentioned, you don't need a Yavana to come from Greece to give you information. In the past, we did have multiple scholars from different parts of the world coming in and learning, and it is possible that some Yavana from that group eventually also contributed to Jyotisham. That is one possibility. Another possibility is this Yavana is actually not the Greek Yavana that we are thinking. It's actually reference to the other meanings that we are seeing. And more importantly, just like today you have ISKCON and Hare Krishna movement, if let's say someone from Greece did come and settle in India and learnt everything the traditional way, he might still be referred to as that, oh, foreigner, that Yavana, right? So it could also be a reference to that, his inheritance or where he comes from. So what we do know is that Yavana taught Bhrigu and Bhrigu taught Shaunaka, and this is considered the traditional lineage of passing on of Jyotisham.
Isn't Parashar Rishi the father of Vyas Rishi? So
Yes,
shouldn't Parashar Rishi be the, or is this a different Vyas, not the Krishna Vaipayana
it's possible
Vyas?
it's a different Vyasa. You are very right. But in this case, Parashara is coming much later in the Pravartaka
Hmm.
lineage.
And Shaunak Rishi is the same one in which are mentioned in the Puran, so in the
I would
Mahabharata
assume
and
so. I would assume so. So now we talked about Graha and Nakshatra, right? So let's first understand the definition because it's important distinction which is often gotten wrong. So Grahaha Kaha. So what is a Graha? Grinhati Bhani or iti Graha. Okay. So what does that mean? Something which grabs. Okay. That is a Graha. And Nakshatram Kim Naksharati iti Nakshatram. So that which does not decay is a nakshatra. Okay. So now with this definition, what we have to understand is anything which is celestial and moves is a graha. So our translation of graha into planets is incorrect because the graha definition encompasses not just planets, it encompasses any large object which has a gravitational pull and which moves in the sky. So therefore, Chandra is a graha. It's not that people didn't know the distinction between a planet and a moon. The definition of graha is different. So that's the first important thing that people are getting wrong when they're translating. So graha should be translated as celestial objects in the sky. Okay. So that is one. Two, what is a nakshatra? That which does not decay. So again, a recognition that there is some stability in that bright light in the sky, that becomes the basis of. So from your perspective, if there are certain constellations, certain lights in the sky which are fixed, which remain across multiple generations, those then become your reference points, and therefore those are the nakshatras. So again, it's not that we are, some say that it should be not 27, there are actually more constellations, agreed, but the idea is that there are multiple stars, right? But the idea is you have selected certain fixed ones in order to help classify the sky and categorize it. So Lagnam Kim. So what is the Lagna? Yasmin Rashau Suryah Udeti Tasmin Rashihi Dinasya Lagnam Bhavati. So let's say today the Surya is rising from the horizon. Whichever the Rashi is in that direction at that point, that becomes the day's Lagna. So let's say in your your Kundali, you have a Rashi, you have a Nakshatra, and then you have a Lagna. Lagna is not a concept that's seen in English Western ones. It's they translate as ascendant. Okay, but what is that Lagna? That Lagna is during your birth time. What was on that day from which Rashi did the sun rise from? So that becomes the Lagna. Okay. Now, if you go further, what are the nakshatras? Nakshatrani kani. Nabha mandale yani nakshatrani sthira rupena drishyante te eva svikriyante. So whatever is fixed in the sky, that is what you accept. So now if you go using the list that is provided traditionally, you have this is in the Anushtup Chandas. Okay. So Ashwini Bharani Chaiva Kritika Rohini Tatha Mrigashishas Tatha Chadri Punat Vasuk Pushyako Ashlesha Cha Magha Purva Phalgunyuttara Phalguni Hasta Chitra Tatha Swathi Vishakha Chanuradika ज्येष्ठा मूलं तथा षाढे पूर्वोत्तरपदादिके श्रवणा च धनिष्ठा च शतभिषक्काध्यभाद्रिका उत्तरा भाद्रपदं चैव रेवत्येतानि भानि च. Okay, so there are totally 27 nakshatras and 108 padas. So the nakshatras are divided across 4 parts. So there are 408 padas in total, and there are 12 rashis in total. Now Abhijit is a nakshatra, but so Abhijit namaka anya nakshatram api asti Uttarashada Shravanayoho madhye. So there is Abhijit which is recognized between Uttarashada and Shravana nakshatras. Parantu paramparayam na yojita. So traditionally, I mean, it's acknowledged, yeah, it exists, but it's divided into 27. Okay, the sky is divided into 27 on the basis of these stars that you have in the sky. Now let's look at the concept of Panchangam. Okay, so why is it called Panchangam? It consists of 5 parts: Tithi, Vasara, Nakshatram, Yoga, Karanam. Okay, so it is Tithi, Vasara, Nakshatre, Yoga, Karanameva cha iti Panchangam Akhyatam Vrita Parvani Darshanam. Okay, so it is going to help you in identifying the Parva and the understanding which festival comes when, what to do when, which is auspicious, which is inauspicious, and also keeping track of time, your calendar system essentially. Okay, so what is Tithi? Dwadasha Bhiram Shaistu Tithikyeya. Okay, so Pratidinam Yada Surya Ekam Amsham Chalati Chandraha 13 Amshaha Vitarati. Okay, so if the sun moves by 1 degree, the moon moves by 13 degrees, and this is with respect to you on earth. So with you as a reference, whenever the sun is moving by 1 degree in the sky, the moon has moved by 13 degrees. Okay, so basically you have done this with Bhumi as the Kendra Rupena Svikritya Manam Kriyate. So you're doing all calculations with the earth as a center. That doesn't mean everything revolves around the earth. It is when you're taking everything in a relative mode, the assumption will cancel it out, right? So even if I consider everything with respect to earth, because both calculations were with respect to earth, it doesn't matter whether I took the sun as a center or the earth as a center for the calculation. अर्थात चंद्रमानम अनुसारेण 13 degree minus 1, so 12 degree अंशाः यदा वितरणं भविष्यति तथा तदा तिथिः कथ्यते. So that difference between the sun's movement and the moon's movement, that 12 degrees difference is what constitutes a tithi, and that is why sometimes you end up having multiple tithis on the same day, because our calculation of tithi considers both the moon and the sun. It's not just the sun revolving around, sorry, not sun revolving, the earth revolving around the sun. It is also with respect to the moon's position. Okay, then you have the varam athava vasara. So saptagrahanam shanaicharat shighra gati anusarena, okay, 24 होरार्थं स्थापयति चेत् क्रमेण भवति शनिवासरः, रविवासरः, सोमवासरः, मंगलवासरः, बुधवासरः, गुरुवासरः, शुक्रवासरः. Now, it is a misconception that the 7 days of the week came from the Greeks. Are you aware of this? Yeah. So the assumption was that any reference in any Jyotisham text which said 7 days of the week, automatically it was assumed, okay, the Greeks brought this, therefore those texts will be post-dated. So everything will automatically move to after Alexander's invasion or something like that. So like this, they were historically using those as reasons for post-dating many of our texts. But the fact remains that in European texts, you do not have the logical explanation for why the days are corresponding to the specific devatas. That explanation can only be found in Indian texts, which is giving you a basis, basically stating that you arrange the grahas from the slowest to the fastest, and then you actually arrange them in order, and then the adhipati for that becomes the corresponding devata. Okay.
It's given in Surya Siddhanta, I guess. I mean, even in Surya
Yes.
Siddhanta, it's mentioned.
Yes. Okay. So the concept of Vasara is very much Indian. Unfortunately, some of the older texts, if you read colonial texts, they might say use that as an explanation, because assumption was always made Greeks taught Indians everything. Okay. So that was the assumption. Okay. Next, yoga. Saptavimshati yogaha santi. Atra yoga sanya rupena swikarniyam. Atra darshana rupena shabdasya upyogam nasti. So here the yoga is not the yoga darshana. Okay, it's not that yoga. There are sapta vimshati, 27 yogas. Okay, and here it is a technical term. Okay, Jyotisha Shastre yogam ityukte grahanam samahara. So in a sense the definition is same. So the union or the collection of grahas is called a yoga. Okay, so now a Nitya yoga, what you do is you take the longitude of the sun and the longitude of the moon and you divide it by 13 degrees 20 minutes. That gives you the Nitya yoga. Okay, then you have Karanam, which is Titeh Ardha Bhaga. So if there are 27 yogas, half of each yoga is a Karana. So there are Ekadasha. Okay, there are 11 Karanas. So I actually want to maybe quickly share my screen. Have you used Drik Panchang, Ashwinji? Okay, I'll just show you what you can do with it. Let me know when you can see my screen. You can see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So today's date is 11th July, right? So today is Jyeshtha Krishna Paksha Dwadashi, okay, and it's the year 1948. Parabhava Shaka Samvat. So I have said Kanchipuram. Let's change it. Which city are you in, Ashwini?
Solapur.
Okay. So you are in Solapur. Today your sunrise, according to the Drik Panchang, should have been by 5:58 a.m. Okay. The moon rose around 3:23 a.m. Oh no, sorry, that happened the next day. And the moon will set around 4 p.m. Okay. And today the sun will set today for you around 7:05 p.m. Maybe check and confirm. So what is today's tithi? It is Dwadashi up to 2 a.m. tomorrow. Okay. So today is Dwadashi. Tomorrow until 2 a.m. also it will remain Dwadashi. After that it will become Trayodashi.
Oh, but is it a different Drug project? Because in the calendar which we have, na, in that today was Bhagavad Ekadashi. Yesterday was also
Correct.
Ekadashi,
So
Smart
that's the thing.
Ekadashi, and today
There
was
are different calendars. If you see here, you have multiple options. You have,
okay.
I'm not sure what calendar you're following Marathi calendar, is it? I don't know. Huh?
Hmm.
So let's maybe switch to that. Anyway, so you will get the details. What here,
Hmm.
I'll stick to Drig just because I don't want to confuse.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So why those differences come is because of a few reasons, such as what you're taking into consideration, right? For example, I
Hmm.
know that the Ekadashi sometimes people treat it differently. So for you,
Hmm.
you're saying today is not Dwadashi, today is Ekadashi, is it?
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
So, in fact, this is the reason why sometimes our festivals fall on different dates. So, like some people will be
Hmm.
celebrating it one day before, and the others will be celebrating it. This is because of those traditional differences. But essentially, the idea is that each region was following its calculation, and therefore,
Hmm.
uh, those minor variations were taking place. Okay. Now, if you take the nakshatra, today's nakshatra
Hmm.
is Kritika up to 11. So it's already 11:30. So it's no longer Kritika nakshatra. It is now Rohini nakshatra. Okay. And the yoga is Ganda yoga. Okay. Um, up till tomorrow. So it's Swami is
So
Agni.
Ganda Yoga is a class.
Yeah, it's considered inauspicious. Hence,
Yeah, but
only.
you can. Yeah. So
Huh?
you said yoga is a collection of planets or of celestial bodies.
No, so yoga is based on the let's say union between the grahas. So depending upon the position of the sun and the moon, you calculate different yogas. Make sense?
Hmm.
Okay. So now the first six ghati of Ganda are considered inauspicious for all good activities. So it is excluded from a good muhurta time. Now, obviously, one thing that you'll often hear is in any day there's always some inauspicious time, right? But others don't follow it, so it's not like they are having anything wrong. Again, muhurta you usually check for very important events in your life. So that's why for marriage they check the muhurta, right? It's a very important stage in your life. It is, I mean, understood that not everything can be done according to the auspicious muhurta. Okay, so that is implicitly understood. Obviously, those who want to obsess over it can obsess over it, but this calculation exists for each day. Okay, and this calculation is
Hmm.
done in advance. That's why you get those Panchanga documents well in advance, right, for that entire year. And of course, the week is Shanivara, and the Paksha is Krishna
Hmm.
Paksha. Okay, and then again in the
In our
year also there are different.
today's yes.
Sorry.
In our Marathi calendar, today is a Shubha Divas. So nice.
Hmm.
So two
Shubha
different
Divas for
calendars. Shubha Divas. It's just so in the calendar, it's only mentioned a Shubha Divas. So you
because
can
it
do
is Ekadashi.
also this. Maybe no,
Hmm.
not yeah, maybe. But it mean, I don't know the reason why they write Shubha Divas, but there are some Shubha Divas mentioned throughout the month. So you
Hmm,
know,
hmm,
if you
hmm,
have
hmm.
some work pending,
Yeah,
you can do it on that day.
yeah. So as you can also see here, the years also there are some differences, right? So for example, some people follow
Hmm.
the Vikram Samvat. Nepal also
Vikram.
follows Vikram Samvat. So according to that, it's 2083 because that calendar started before the supposed Jesus Christ birth date. Okay. Shaka Samvat is 1948. This is the official calendar also, if I'm not wrong. So we, according to official Indian calendar, Government of India, it follows 1948. It's the year Parabhava. And this Shaka Samvat, it's dated after the supposed birth date of Jesus. Therefore, we are little back compared to 2026, right? And of course, the Gujaratis, they are following 2082. They're 1 year behind, and it's the year Pingala. So obviously, there are regional variations, and Vedānga Jyotisham acknowledges this as well. So it's not like this is some kind of accident. In the Shastras itself, it is recognized that different regions have variations in what is followed. But there are fundamental concepts which all of them will have, right? The yoga, karana. all that is going to be fundamentally the same. Okay. Namaste, Jyotiji.
Namaste, Vimalji.
Okay. So we saw the yoga and the karana, right? So which is based on the distance between the grahas, based on which it's the yoga in that sense, the union in that sense. So now there are three aspects to Jyotisha. Skandha Trayatmakam Jyotihi Shastram Etat Shadangavat. Basically, it says there are three skandhas, there are three shoulders, so three parts to the Jyotisham. One is Samhita, then you have Siddhanta, sorry, then you have Hora. Now, when people think of Jyotish, they go typically for the Muhurta calculation or they go for astrology, right? Now, that astrology actually comes under Hora Shastra. So, today, Jyotisha people automatically assume is just astrology, but that is just one third of the entire Shastra. You also had Samhita and Siddhanta, which is the astronomical calculations and other aspects. Okay. So Samhitayam kim asti? Sandhiyate vibhinna vishayaha atra iti samhita. So it's a collection of different topics is a samhita. Atra drashtum shakyate nakshatra kurma vibhagah. Okay. Shakuna vicharah, Angavidya, Ratna Pariksha, Deepalakshanam, Shwana Lakshanam, Purusha Lakshanam, Stri Lakshanam, Ketu Charaha, Grihanam Charaha, Ityadi Santi. Okay. Now, what is Grihanam Charaha? It is the movement of the planets. Now, okay, I made a mistake. It's not planets, movement of celestial objects, which includes planets and other objects. Okay. Then you have Ketu Charaha. What is Ketu Charaha? This is a reference to comets, observance of comets. Now, what is Tri Lakshana, Purusha Lakshana, Shwana Lakshana, Deepa Lakshana? Now, this is what you would consider. This can easily be dismissed as, superstition and all that. But this is actually documenting. Let's say, for example, there is a diya that you have lit. If a bad person enters your house, that diya's light will flicker. So those types of things are documented here. So today it's assumed to be like, Andhvishwasi or whatever, right? Oh, the diya, it got extinguished. Something bad is going to happen. But actually all that is coming from the Samhita. Certain topics like Deepa Lakshana will talk about if there is good energy, the light lamp will burn very happily. If there is negative energy, it will get diminished. All that. So Deepa Lakshana becomes topic surrounding how the flame's behavior changes according to different circumstances or what is going to happen. Shwana Lakshana, again, this is about the dog. So, if the dog is barking, that is a bad sign. If the dog does this is a good sign. So, actually, using dog's behavior again to make certain analysis of what could happen. So, it's like a predictive analysis based on dogs. Now, Purusha Lakshana and Stri Lakshana. So, now here, Purusha Lakshana is about, today some people will say, I can read a person just by looking at them. Or they'll say, I can understand your character just by observing you, right? That is essentially Purusha Lakshana, Stri Lakshana, but again, in a predictive fashion. So, in the sense, it would have things like, just giving an example. Someone with wavy hair may have this tendency. Someone with this kind of feature may have this tendency. Things like that. So that kind of level of analysis is done. Likewise, three for the woman as well. Okay. Then you have what else? Shakuna Vicharaha. So again, this is good and bad shagun. So, for example, let's say just as you're about to leave, something happens. Is that a good sign or a bad sign? So on and so forth. Then Ratna Pariksha. This is literally how to evaluate the quality of gems. That is in Jyotisham. Okay. And Nakshatra Kurma Vibhaga, again, analysis of astronomy aspects. So what are some books associated with it? Brihat Samhita, Muhurta Chintamani, Ityadi. Okay. So Muhurta Chintamani, as you can guess, is about Muhurtas. It's about for your Shodasha Samskaras, what is the right Muhurta for each of those Samskara, for Karna Veda, for Nama Karana, for Vivaha, how should you calculate the Muhurta? All those are in Muhurta Chintamani. Going ahead, yeah, so again, Samhita, Siddhanta, Hora, right? So we looked at Samhita, now let's look at Siddhanta. So in Siddhanta, Siddhanta Jyotishame Grahanam Charaha Ganitam Yantrani Upari Vivaranam Prashnottara Rupena Charcha Ityadi Vishayaha Vartante. So in the form of question answer format, you have explanations about Grahanam Charaha, so movement of celestial objects, Ganitam, mathematics associated with it, Yantrani, so instruments associated with how you would probably measure, so on and so forth. So the Mukhya Granthas are Pancha Siddhantika, Siddhanta Shiromani, okay, Arya Bhattiyam, and Leelavati are just some, okay. Now, Samhitayam kim asti. So what is inside Samhita? Sandhiyate vibhinna vishaya atra iti Samhita. Oh, actually, I think we already covered it. Sorry, my bad. So this is a repeat. So I'll skip. Now, Siddhanta Pravartakaha we already saw, right? Suryaha Pitamaho Vyaso Vasishtotri Parashara Kashyapo Narado Gargo Marichihi Manur Angira Lomashah Paulashishchaiva Chavano Yavano Bhrigu Shaunakoshtatashaschaitte Jyotihi Shastra Pravartakaha. Now each of these Pravartakas have also written their Siddhanta. So you have multiple Siddhantas associated with each of these. So you have Surya Siddhanta, you have Pitamaha Siddhanta, which is nothing but Brahma associated with Lord Brahma, Vyasa Siddhanta, Vashishta Siddhanta, Atri Siddhanta, Kashyapa Siddhanta, Lomasha Siddhanta, Narada Siddhanta, Paulisha Siddhanta, Garga Siddhanta, Marichi Siddhanta, Manu Siddhanta, Chavana Siddhanta, Yavana Siddhanta, Bhrigu Siddhanta, Parashara Siddhanta, Angirasa Siddhanta, Shaunaka Siddhanta. Okay, and as we already saw, Yavana here can mean Ionian Sea, so it could be a Greek, it could also mean wheat, swiftness, horse. There are multiple meanings. So, Triskandam Jyotisham Hora Ganitam Samhiteti cha. So, as we saw, you can divide into Hora, Siddhanta, Samhita. There is another way also of classifying into 5 parts instead of 3 parts. So that becomes Prashnaha, Shakunam, Samhita, Siddhantaha, Hora. So Hora remains Hora. Siddhanta and Samhita you already know. There are 2 additional terminologies here, Prashnaha and Shakunam. Now, interesting thing, Prashna is exactly the same as what today in Western astrology they call tarot reading. So basically you ask a question and then you pick your card. So Prashna is about the exact time that you ask the question and what is the universe's response to that question, and you reading the energy based on that. So in India, we didn't use tarot cards, but we used other methods. Like for example, you would have had certain communities who today will be called Shudras, but who were practicing all this. Like for example, there will be a parrot which will pick something, and then based on that, the Prashna, whatever you asked, the prediction will be made by that person. In some places they will bring a bullock or a cow, and that cow's behavior will again be used to make that prediction, right? And then Shakunam is, as I already said, Shakunam, like good, what is good omen, bad omen in a general sense. So especially Kerala is very well known for prashnas. So you go to that person, they will have the what should I call? It's called shori, or those seashells, right? So they use seashells to basically make the prediction, not based on what necessarily you ask, but when you ask. So when you approach them, based on that time, they will check and they will like throw the seashells, and based on that, the way it's falling, they will again make an analysis and give you the explanation or prediction. So a little deeper here, Siddhanta, you have Kala Ganana, time calculation. Navavidha Kalamana, okay. So what are the 9 types of calculating time? Manava, Daiva, Paitra, Arsha, Saura, Chandra, Brahma. So again, we are saying that there are multiple ways. As you can see, Chandra is the lunar calendar, Saura is the solar calendar. Okay, Arsha is the Rishi. Okay, what the Rishis were following. Then you have Grahanam Sthiti Gatyadayah. Okay, what is the nature of the grahas? Grahana Vicharaha, more description of the grahas. Anga Ganitam, Bija Ganitam, Rekha Ganitam, Bhubhramana Siddhantaha, okay, movement of the Bhu, Panchanga Jnanam, you already saw. In Samhita, you have Griha Nakshatradina, Shubha Shubha Lakshanani. Again, same. What is Shubha, what is Ashubha? Shakuna Vidya we already saw. Vriksha Ayurveda. So by the way, Vriksha Ayurveda. So Jyotisham actually has some very interesting topics which you might not think is associated with Jyotisham. So as we saw earlier, of course, Muhurta, astronomy, all that is there. But even something like Ratna Pariksha, Vriksha Ayurveda. So basically your scientific forestry is in Jyotisham. Which plant, how to plant, which tree, how to take care of it, all that comes under Jyotisham. Then you have Vastu Vidya. So again, the whole concept of Feng Shui and all that we are following. The Vastu Vidya is again in Jyotisham. Anga Vidya and Hasta Rekha Jnanam. Hasta Rekha Jnanam, literally palmistry. Okay. So people reading your palm, again that comes under Hasta Rekha Jnanam. Anga Vidya is literally using any part of your body to make the prediction. And then in Kerala, you have Prashnat Shubha Shubha Jnana. I already explained, right? In Kerala, it's very well known for this kind of Prashna Marga. In Ramalam, you have Pashaka Sahayana Shubha Shubha Jnana. Okay, so you use the Pashaka for that. Essentially, you're using something. The Western people are using the cards. In Hora, what all is in part of it? Again, Hora is not just theory, it is mathematical calculation. Kundal Nirmanam, you can't do Kundali calculation without having understanding of Grahas, position, all that. Janma Kundalya Graha Nakshratranam Paraspara Sambandha, the influence of different Grahas on your Janma Kundali. Arishta Jnanam, actually I forgot what it is, I forgot. Antardasha Mahadasha, again, what kind of influence the Grahas are having due to the Dasha on you. Ayuhu Nirdharanam, lifeline prediction. Deshasya Varshika Phaladesha. Yeah. So this, just like you have a Kundali, your Rashtra can also be given a Janma Kundali based on when it was formed. And based on that, you can again predict, is Bharat going to have a bad year, is it going to have a good year, so on and so forth, right? So all this is part of Jyotisham. Now, let's understand a little more into this concept of the Rashis and the further Vargas, okay? Rashinam Swarupa Vicharaha Brihad Jatake Asti. So Brihad Jataka has explanation of the 12 Rashis. Just a moment. Yes. So, how does it go? This is Vasanta Tilaka. We did this last Saturday, right? So, how does it go? Ukta Vasanta Tilaka Tavaja Jagauga. Ukta Vasanta Tilaka Tavaja Jagauga. Matsyaughatim Rimuthunam Sagadam Savinam. Chapi Naroshva Jagano Makaro Mragasya Taulisa Sasya Dahana Plavagacha Kanya Shesha Swanama Sadrisha Swacharascha Sarve. What is it saying? It's basically describing the 12 Rashis, which I have shown here in the form of a chakra. Okay. So Ahoratram ityukte Ratrischa Dinayoho Samahara. So the very word R, English word R actually comes from Ahoratram, which literally means both the day and night, something which is there in both day and night. So that becomes your Ahoratram. So Angla Bhashayam Uktam Shabdaha R api Ahoratra Shabdat Utpannaha. So it comes from that. Janma Samaya Akashe Vidyamanana Grahanam Stitim Dignaya होराकुण्डलीं निर्माय 12 भावेषु कुत्र कुत्र कस्मिन् ग्रहाः सन्ति इति ज्ञात्वा फलकथनं क्रियते. So फलकथनं is what is the outcome of the different grahas being in different positions of the sky. Okay, so how does it work? कुण्डल्यां यदि 12 विभागाः क्रियते चेत्, so if you take the world around you and then you create 12 equal parts in the sky, sky that you see, with the Bhumandala as the Kendra, then you get 360 degrees, right? And each part becomes trimshat, right? Essentially becomes 30 degrees. So 360 degrees gets divided into 30-degree parts. Okay. Now, if you again divide it further, before you divide it further, then in the order of what you have got, you get Meshaha, Vrishabhaha, Mithunam, Karka, Simha, Kanya, Tula, Virchika, Dhanu, Makara, Kumbha, Meena. Okay. Now, again, if you go further in Brihad Jataka, Pratham Adhyaya, this is in Indra Vajra. Okay, so Indra Vajra goes like this. Again, I have added the Guru Lagu for calculation. Indra Vajra will always have this Guru Lagu combination. Deshkana Hora Navabhaga Sanya Strimsham Shakadwa Dasha Sankitasya Kshetram cha yadyasya satasya vargo horeti lagnam bhavanasya chartham. Okay, so essentially what it's saying is it's defining the 6 vargas. Now Rashi is only the 30-degree varga. Okay, you can divide it further. If you divide each Rashi by half, then you get Hora, which is 15 degrees. Okay. And if you divide Rashi by 3 times, each Rashi by 3 times, then you get Dreshkana, which is 10 degrees each. So if there are 12 Rashis and Dreshkana is divided by that, then you basically have 36 Dreshkanas of 10 degrees each. Make sense? Now, what happens when you have a Navamsha? Navamsha is 3 degrees 20 minutes and it's also called Dharma, which is nothing but 9 into 12 divisions. So you take the Rashis, the 12 Rashis, and you divide each Rashi by 9 times. What do you get? You actually get 108 divisions of Navamsha. Okay, you get this number which is considered sacred. And incidentally, when you do a marriage, basically Kundali comparison, you check the Navamsha. You don't check your Rashi. You check the Navamsha chart. Okay, and that's why your wife is probably called Dharma Patni, right? You're using it's the basis of Dharma, and then it is pretty much the rest of your life. The first half of your life, people typically look at the Rashi chart, but after, especially for marriage and afterwards, as people develop and mature, the Navamsha chart becomes much more important, and the Navamsha chart, as you can see, is divided much more, 9 times more than the Rashi. Okay. So then let's say instead of 9 times you divide it into Dwadashamsha, 12, then you get 2 degrees 30 minute based divisions. Trimshamsha, then that becomes 1 degree. Essentially you've divided it 30 times. You've divided a Rashi 30 times. Okay, so this is the level to which the calculations are being made. So a Rashi analysis might go wrong, okay, because yes, you're dividing it into 12, but a Navamsha is 9 times more accurate, because essentially you're in just a few seconds you might shift from one Navamsha to another Navamsha, right? Whereas in a Rashi it is a wider period, so obviously multiple people are falling into that category. Also, that chakra that I was describing, right? So this is how it works. On the left, as you can see, this is just to illustrate that when you're dividing the sky, what is that 30 degree that you're calculating? That 30 degree is what you see here. So imagine with, let's say, the earth here or the sun here, you are taking a 30-degree pipe out of it. That becomes a Rashi distribution. Whereas, let's say you take a Navamsha, it will be that many times smaller. Now, obviously, as you can see here, each of the parts of the sky is also associated with the form of the Surya Devata. So you have Mitra, Aryama, Dhata, Parjanya, Usha, Bhagaha. You have Amshuman, Vishnu. So Vishnu is also considered an Aditya. So these are the different Adityas that you see. Twashta. Twashta is also associated with carpentry and basically Shilpakar work, by the way. Vivaswan, Indra, Varuna. Okay. So all these are the different Adityas. So different parts of the sky is governed by or influenced by these Adityas. And
So they're the
again,
same 12 Adityas of the
yes,
33.
yes. Okay. And here again, I've taken an image from another, I think, YouTube video. But the idea was to explain that chakra, okay, how that explain calculations take place. So this is the Earth. So you are sitting here and you look at the sky, and in the sky, the sun has risen from a particular nakshatra. So how do you see that? From this direction, right? So this direction, what is the Rashi there? That becomes the Lagna, right? And then where is this is, let's say, I think this is Saturn, right? So this is so Venus. My bad. That's Jupiter. That's Jupiter. And this, I think, is Saturn. Yeah. So Saturn is Shaneshwara, right? So now, again, how do you calculate where the Shani is in your chart? In the sky, which in that direction, which is the Rashi in which it is located. So then which direction in the sky Chandra is located. So if you do that in the mandala, what is the Rashi on that side? So accordingly you get that mapping, and then this gets translated into, in the South Indian format it looks like rectangular boxes like this. In the North Indian format it's diamond shaped boxes, and in the Eastern format it's a mix of the North and South format. As you can see, it's a mix of rectangular boxes and a little bit of the triangular box. So East is a mix of both, and South is rectangular, North is the diamond shape. So the representation is slightly different, but essentially the mapping is based on this. So I thought this is a pretty helpful diagram. These two together help you understand how that mapping is taking place between what you see in the sky versus what you see, what gets put onto your kundali. Okay. So yes, the Ahoratra, as we saw, is a 1 day and night cycle. Now, the traditional method is described here. 1 day is equal to 8 praharaha or 30 muhurtas. And one muhurta, which is 1/30th of a day, has 2 ghatayah. So it's 1 ghati, okay? And 1 ghati is 1/60th of a day. And 1 ghati has 30 kalas. 1 kala is 1,800th of a day, okay? And 1 kala consists of 30 kashtas, okay? 1 kashta consists of 18 nimeshas. 1 nimesha is consisting of 30 tatpara. 1 tatpara consists of 100 truti. And 1 truti is 29.6 microseconds. So this level of sukshmata calculations have been made. This is in the smaller side, smaller direction, right? Now if you go in the longer direction, 1 year of Earth is Deva Ahoratra. Okay. Now Deva Ahoratrani is Deva Vatsaraha. Deva Vatsaraha, again, Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga, Chatur Yuga. Then you have the Chatur Yuga totally consists of a kalpa, and then the 2 kalpas make Brahma's Ahoratra. Okay. Now obviously here you will see some disagreement. Some people will say this assumption of how many years make up Satya, Treta, Dwapara are incorrect, and this is an ongoing discussion. I will not get into it. So different people are giving it different calculations. So accordingly, the timeline of Itihas is shift. Okay, so I will not get into that. But essentially, even in the longer sense, there is a calculation that exists. Now, what's the difference between the Sauramana and Chandramana? So as you can see here, let's say you are here, the Surya is here. Now it's the Kumbha, okay, where the sun's rise is happening. So what would that mean for you? So let's see here. There is Phalguna Masa and Kumbha, right? So for the moon, it is Phalguna Masa, okay, because the moon is on the Purva Phalguni side, whereas for the sun it is the Kumbha because it is on the Kumbha side. So based on the position of both, you do the calculation. But essentially, if you go the Sauramana is solar calendar, it will start with Meena Masa. Actually, it doesn't start with Meena Masa; it starts with Mesha Masa. But yes, on the chart when you place, you will put Meena also. So you either start with Mesha. So let's start with Mesha. Mesha Masa, Vrishabha Masa, Mithuna, Karkataka, Simha Masa, Kanya Masa, Tula, Vrishchika Masa, Dhanur Masa, Makara Masa, Kumbha Masa, then Meena Masa. Okay, so it actually goes in that format. And each time there is this entry and the start of the Masa, you actually have a Shankranti. So why is it called Makara Shankranti? It is called Makara Shankranti because, where is that? Makara Masa. Yeah. So that is the same link that is the reason why you have so many Shankrantis. You have 12 Shankrantis per year. Now let's say you take Chandramana. So here again it starts with Chaitra Masa, Vaishakha, Jyeshtha. So right now Jyeshtha Masa is going on. Ashada, Shravana, Bhadrapada, Ashvina, Kartika, Margashirsha, Pausha, Magha, Phalguna. Okay. Now what we typically follow, depending upon the community you're part of, it may be a combination of Saura and Chandra, right? So for example, Shankrantis would be based on the Sauramana, whereas certain festivals will be based on the lunisolar, right? So accordingly. So I know we are maybe at the top of our time, so maybe I'll close with this. Most Indian and Western scholars, based on internal evidence, cite Varahamihira period as 6th century CE. Specifically, his famous work Panchasiddhantika mentions the Shaka year 427 or 505 CE, and other contemporary evidence confirms his activity between 505 to 587. Now, in internal references, Varahamihira refers to Aryabhatta, who was his predecessor. So Al-Biruni, who is often quoted and is considered quite important external source of evidence, typically by the rest of the world. His commentaries also refer to him, and that is also used to date him. There are some commentaries by Bhattotpala dated to 900 CE, refer exclusively to Brihad Jataka. Okay, so the Brihad Jataka definitely existed by the 900 AD. However, Parashara Hora Shastra is dated after Brihad Jataka by Varahamihira by Indologists. Okay, now the funny thing is, Parashara has to predate Varahamihira by the traditional sense. But the Indologists, they typically don't give a damn about all these things. So they date Parashara Hora Shastra to much later. Because of this, a lot of important concepts in Parashara Hora Shastra becomes post-dated after the Greeks instead of being before. Now, Parashara is known as the son of Shakti Muni, grandson of the great sage Vashishta, and the father of Vyasa. Right? He is attributed with the authorship of key ancient texts including Vishnu Purana and Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra. Most traditional sources and Puranic genealogies place Parashara several generations before Mahabharata war, as he is the father of Vyasa. He is also referred to as a rishi in the Rigveda mandalas, indicating how ancient his position was. However, you are dating a Shastra associated with him to much later, which is honestly a comedy. Now, one of the reasons given initially to post-date Parashara Hora Shastra was that Parashara Hora Shastra refers to 7 days of the week, but as we already saw, that is based on an incorrect conclusion. So like this, I think we need to revisit some of our Shastras and its dating. Many of the colonial and I would say even arrogant assumptions about the text need to be revisited, and we probably need to predate some of our texts. Again, we need to, this has to be an effort. Nobody's going to do it for us. We have to do it ourselves. So, if you see, the Roman Empire started using the 7-day planetary week in Italy in the second half of the 1st century BC. This is the earliest period when the Greeks are also documented using it for practical purposes. Just 1st century BC is when the Roman Empire and the Greeks started using 7 days a week. And they are saying that they are the ones who taught it to Indians, right? Though astrological texts may reflect awareness of the system slightly earlier. Earliest known Greek inscription that directly employs a day of the 7-day week as a calendrical reference is from 1st century CE. Okay, Greek inscription mentions Friday, the day before Sabbath at Ankara, Turkey, and it is dated to 87 December 28 December 87 CE. The inscription uses Eastern Cypriot calendar and explicitly references the days of the week believed to be by Jewish community in the region. However, there is no evidence of dating formulas based entirely on the planetary 7-day week in mainstream Hellenistic Greek. Okay. Names and references to individual nakshatra found in Rig Veda at least 1500. This is like the minimal dating that is accepted, 1500 BC for Rig Veda. And it includes mention of the wheel of heaven divided into 27 or 28 parts. Okay. The first systematic listing and astronomical description of 27 nakshatra occurs in Vedānga Jyotisham. Again, this is supposedly this period dated to 1000 to 1200 BC. As I mentioned, Rishi Lagada is associated with it. It maps the moon's path through these 27 divisions for timekeeping and muhurta. Taittiriya Samhita and Shatapatha Brahmana also list 27 nakshatras, attesting to an established lunar zodiac system. Okay. So the 12 Rashis are thought of being formalized into a solar zodiac system influenced partially by Mesopotamia only around 500 BC. But is that really true? Right? So if you ask official answers, they will say that it came from Mesopotamia. We can't ask the Mesopotamians because today they don't exist. But we do have Indian literature which clearly gives the explanation, which is missing in the European side. So with that, maybe I'll stop for the day. I have a question, Ashwinji. Should I cover a little more about Hora Shastra next session, or do you want to continue with Vedānga, other Vedangas?
We can continue with the other Vedānga. We have got a fair idea of the introduction. I guess it will just go on increasing, right, into depth and complexity after this.
Yeah. So I thought I could probably share a little bit about the Hora Skanda. Maybe should I just take 10 more minutes and cover it? Are you okay?
Yeah, me personally, I personally would be interested in learning more about this Kundali as well. What is Hora Shastra?
Okay, then let's cover it quickly today itself. Okay, so in how the Kundali actually works is 3 and 4 are the North Indian system, 1 and 2 are the South Indian system. Okay, Dakshina Bharatasya Kundalyam Lagnam Charaha Bhavati Rashayah Sthiraha. Okay, so your Lagna moves, the Rashis are fixed. So in the South Indian format, if this position is always Mesha, this position is always Rishabha, this position is always Mithuna, this is always Karka, this is always Simha, this is always Kanya, this is always Tula, this is always Vrishchika, this is always Dhanu, this is always Makara, this is always Kumbha, this is Meena. But in the North Indian system, Uttar Bharatasya Kundalya Rashayah Charaha Bhavanti Lagnam Sthiraha. So what happens in the North Indian system? This is your kundli, this first one will always be your lagna. So in the South Indian system, this marking, right, this will keep shifting. So if you were born in Mesha Lagna, then the mark will be here. If you were born in Kanya Lagna, you'll mark here, and then you'll start doing your calculation. You'll go clockwise, starting from your Lagna, and you'll do the calculation. Okay. But in the North Indian system, this position is fixed. Okay. So irrespective of which Rashi you were born in, let's say you were born in Karka Rashi, then Karka will start here, then it will go Karka, Simha, Kanya, Tula, Vrishchika, Dhanu, Makara, Kumbha, Meena, Mesha, Vrishava, Mithuna. So it'll go like that. What is that? Ludo format. Okay? You'll go that format. It will go starting from the top. Let's say you were born in Mithuna Lagna instead of Karka, then nothing. You still started at the same position, but the Rashi, that part of the Rashi changes. So now you are going from Mithuna, Karka, Simha, Kanya, Tula, Vrishchika, Dhanu, Makara, Kumbha, Meena, Mesha, Vrishava. Okay. So the difference between South and North, first fundamental difference is the Rashis are fixed on the chart for the South Indian format, and you move the starting point from which you start your Lagna in the Dakshina. In the North, your position is fixed, you shift the Rashis, and then you move accordingly in the Ludo format. Okay, Ludo is also Indian anyway. So now in the Horaskanta, again, this is just the initial part. If you see here, this again is in Vasanta Tilika. Okay, so this is from Brihad Jatakam. So obviously we can sing it in the form, right? Ukta Vasanta Tilaka Tavaja Jagauga. Ukta Vasanta Tilaka Tavaja Jagauga. One more way, of course, is Varanasi Purapatim Bhaya Vishwanatham. If you heard this, that same tune can also apply to Vasanta Tilaka. Okay. Horadayastu nukutumba sahotha bandhu putrari patni maranani shubhaspadaya vibhakya mityupachanya likarma labha duschikya sangita grihani na nityameki. Okay. Or as I mentioned in the last session last Saturday, the Suprabhatam format also works for Vasanta Tilaka, right? How does that go? Horadayastu nukutumba sahotha bandhu putrari patni maranani shubhasvadaya vibhakya mityupachanya ikarma labha duschikya sangita grihani manityameke. Right? So there are multiple ways you can sing Vasanta Tilaka. But essentially what is it saying? It is saying the explanation that's given here. So let's say you started, I'm using the South Indian format, but of course the same thing applies for North also. So let's say you are starting with the Simha Lagna. So you are born in the Simha Lagna. Okay. So let's say you have Tanu Bhava, okay, which is your Shariram and Deha. So whatever in your Jatak, in your Kundali is your first house, that becomes your Tanu Bhava. That is going to represent your Sharira, your body, right? And different positions give you different qualities to what kind of body you will have, right? Some have a tall frame, some have a lean frame, some have a very, let's say they have a tendency to put on weight easily, so on and so forth, right? Then the second one becomes Dhana Bhava.
So,
Okay.
I have a question in this. In the Samhita and Siddhant, right, there was a topic Purusha Lakshana, Sri
Yeah.
Lakshana. So, is that also dependent on the planet of position? And
Yes.
so, it's all
So
interconnected.
very good connection. So basically, you look at the person's body and then you'll understand. Okay, this graha and this position of the bhava is actually influencing this person. So through that, you are actually indirectly understanding. Okay, these are the influences on the person. So very, very, very good connection you made. Yes. So that is how it works, right? So the second house becomes your dhana bhava, which represents your bandhu janaha and kutumba. Okay. So your second house is your whatever is your family. Okay. Now again, here in this case, for this random person that we've selected, this person who has a lagna of Simha, and their second house is Kanya, but for someone else, the second house may not be Kanya, it could be something else, right? So again, depending upon the Rashi, that same Dhana Bhava will be influenced. And on top of that, there will be different grahas, right? So right now I've not put any graha here. So the grahas will further influence. So it's not just you can't just say, okay, second house is Dhana Bhava, therefore that's it, I need to know. No, you have to see that Dhana Bhava represent what Rashi for you, what are the grahas influencing it, all those come into factor. So that's why it gets complicated. Let's say third one you go, which is your Sahaja Bhava, which is about your Anujahas or Sahodaras. So Anujas is your younger siblings. Okay. Okay. Sahodaras could be your friends. Huh? Next, fourth one is your Sukha Bhava, which is your Mitrani and Bandhava. Okay. So actually I said it wrong. So the fourth one is your friends. Okay. Bandhus. The fifth one is your Putra Bhava, which represents your home. Okay. The sixth one is Ari Bhava, which represents your Shatravaha. So Ari literally means enemy. So sixth house represents what is the flavor of enemies you will have in your life. Then next one is Stri Bhava, which is the Kalatra. Kalatra means your partner. So when you have, let's say, Mangal in your Kalatra Bhava, then they say you have a Mangal dosha. Okay, because Mangal is very warrior-like. It's very opposite of the Stri Bhava, which is required for marriage. So then it creates difficulties. So that becomes your Mangal dosha. I'm just giving an example, right? Then you have Randra Bhava, which represents your Mrityu. It's your eighth house. Okay. So for this particular person whose Lagna started in Simha, Meena is there. Meena Rashi is there. Randra Bhava associated with Mrityu. Now again, depending upon what grahas, I have not included grahas, what grahas exist, it would give an explanation of whether they'll have a long life, difficult life, ailment-filled life, whatever, right? Actually not, sorry, Mrityu, so it's specifically death, so maybe nature of death, my bad. Then you have ninth. Notice each time the number 9 is associated with dharma. So Navamsha is the dharma because it led to 108 divisions, right? The auspicious number. So again, the ninth one here is Dharma Bhava, which is all your Shubha activities, Shubhaspadaya. Then 10th one is your Karma Bhava, which is Karyalaya Kshetra and Sammana. So what is your work life going to be like? How much respect do you get in life? That would again be reflected here. Then you have 11th one, which is Labha Bhava. Okay. How much inheritance or what kind of incremental money might you get. And then the 12th one is Vyaya Bhava, which is literally loss. What kind of losses will you face in life? Okay. Now, on top of that, there is now previously we were just looking at the positions. Now let's also add grahas and add more complication to that. So there are Shad Balas. So Sthana Balasya Udaharana. Okay. So this is just a second. Anyway, so just going on. So what this is telling us is there are certain grahas in certain positions which are considered Ucha Kshetra, Nicha Kshetra and Swakshetra. So what do we mean by that? On the left, I have included all the grahas in that Ucha Kshetra. Okay. What this means is the graha will be at its best. But be careful. Just because a graha is in its best doesn't always mean good thing. Yes, usually it means a good thing, but not always. It just means it is in a position to influence very strongly. Okay. So for Karka, Guru is in its Ucha Kshetra. So if you have in your Jataka, if you have Guru positioned in Karka, it's in its strong position. If you have Buddha in Kanya Rashi, then that is in its Ucha Kshetra. Okay. In English, they use a term, it's debilitated, it is, I forget the term. They use weird terms. I prefer Ucha Kshetra, Nicha Kshetra. In Tula, if you see Shani, it is its Ucha Kshetra. If you see Mangal in Makara, it is in its Ucha Kshetra. If you see Shukra in Meena, it is in its Ucha Kshetra. If you see Surya in Mesha, then it is in its Ucha Kshetra. Again, Chandra, if you see in its Vrishabha Rashi, then it's in its Ucha Kshetra. Now, there's also something called Swakshetra. So, Swakshetra means, like, let's say the Graha is feeling very comfortable in that place. It's not Ucha, but it's very comfortable and happy. So here again you will have multiple mappings. So let's start again. I'm assuming this person is a Karka Lagna person. Okay. So let's start from there. In Karka Rashi, if there is Chandra place, it is in its Swakshetra. In Simha, if Surya is placed, it is in Swakshetra. In Kanya, if Buddha is placed, it is in Swakshetra. Note that for Buddha, Kanya is both the Ucha Kshetra and the Swakshetra. So Kanya is a very good position for Buddha to be in. Tula is it's Swakshetra for Shukra, but it is Ucha Kshetra for Shani. Okay. Vrishchika is Swakshetra for Mangala, whereas it was Makara for Ucha Kshetra. Right. Then for Dhanu you have Guru, which is in its Swakshetra. Makara, Shani is in its Swakshetra. Kumbha also, Shani is very comfortable. Meena again Guru. So you notice Guru is comfortable Swakshetra in Meena and Dhanu Rashi. Kumbha and Makara for Shani, right? Shukra for Vrishabha in Tula, and Mangal for Mesha and Vrishchika. Buddha it is Mithuna and Kanya. And Surya and Chandra is only once. Yeah. So in Swakshetra, this is the mapping. For Ucha Kshetra, each one is associated with one Rashi only. Then you have Nicha Kshetra. So what happens in Nicha Kshetra? Here the Graha would be very, very uncomfortable, which means that it will not be able to provide you much benefits. So let's say, for example, Buddha is in Meena. So Buddha is associated with ability of speech, learning languages. So it is possible that again, other positions also matter. But ideally, a Buddha in Meena would be its Nicha Kshetra, which means you may be someone who says the wrong thing at the wrong time, or you're not able to learn languages easily, things like that. So you'll have a slightly negative impact because the Graha is not comfortable and strongly positioned in that location. So Mesha and Shani. Okay. So then Karka, if in Karka you have Mangal. Yeah. Sorry, you were saying something?
Yeah, so now they say Shani is Sadesati is, well, there is a term, right? So will that be that Shani is in Ucha Kshetra and the Sadesati will be stronger? Or if it's in Nichi Kshetra, the Sadesati will be stronger, the effects of the Sadesati?
Very good question. So are you undergoing Sadesati right now?
I don't know. I'm in Rahu Ketu's Dasha. And why is Rahu Ketu not in this? Like that was my next question. Like, Rahu Ketu.
That's because in traditional Jyotisham, Rahu Ketu doesn't exist.
Okay.
Rahu Ketu was added later, but it's a very good addition. See, some people, I don't know, I feel like they are like anything that got added later is wrong. No, I think some things get added later because it is beneficial. So with Rahu Ketu, you can actually do much more accurate calculation. So a lot of the older works of Jyotisham will not mention Rahu and Ketu. But newer works will mention Rahu Ketu, and in my personal opinion, you should not reject it because it is still a very Indian concept. It's not like Greeks are following Rahu Ketu, right? It's an Indian concept which has been used to actually improve the accuracy of prediction. Actually, Rahu Ketu is based on Chandra, so through Chandra again you can get that calculation. But yes, good catch. I forgot to mention Rahu Ketu is not there in the original older texts of Jyotisham. I'll get back to you on this. I don't want to give a wrong answer. So you're saying if you're undergoing Sadesati and Shani is in a Ucha Kshetra versus a Nicha Kshetra, what is the impact that it has, right? Good question. So yes, Vrishchika is the Nicha Kshetra for Chandra. Tula is Nicha Kshetra for Surya. Makara is Nicha Kshetra for Guru. And I think as we already saw, Buddha, Meena is Neecha Kshetra for Buddha. Now let's take the example of, not example, rather another concept, which is the concept of Kendra, Panapharam, Apoklimam. Okay. So what are these three terms? I've used both the North Indian and South Indian format to explain. So let's say this is your starting point. This is your lagna, right? So you start with Vrishchika. Again, in North Indian format, you start with Vrishchika, then you have Dhanu, Makara, Kumbha, Meena. Vrishchika, Dhanu, Makara, Kumbha, Meena. So it's just, okay, so it's the same person's chart. Now let's say you started with Vrishchika, which is your lagna. So now that becomes your Kendra, okay, followed by, let's say, where is it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Fourth position from that becomes the next Kendra. Then 1, 2, 3, 4. Next again becomes your Kendra. Then again 1, 2, 3, 4. That becomes your Kendra. So for this particular person, the Kendras are the Kumbha Rashi, 4th house, the 7th house, which is Vrishabha, the 9th house, which is Karka, and its Lagna, which is Vrishchika. Okay. So this rectangle here, the square are the Kendras. These are the 4 points of the square. In the North Indian chart, how does that get reflected? That same 1, 4, 7, 10 is literally the rectangle in the center. Okay, so that's the advantage of the North Indian chart. Each has its advantage, disadvantage. So in the North Indian chart, the Kendra is already the inner rectangle. So you can very easily see which is the Kendra in the North Indian chart. In the South Indian, I had to count and check, right? Okay, it's this, these are the Kendras, and the square is also tilted. In the North Indian chart, it's literally the inner 4 squares, those are the Kendras. So again, those play a role. What graha is there, that will have an impact. Okay, all those also matter. Then the next one, if you see here, I've highlighted 159, right, in the North Indian chart, which is for this particular person's case. This is the Vrishchika Rashi, Meena Rashi, and Karka Rashi. So what does that correspond to? This triangle here. So it is your 159, which is 1, 5, and 9. Yeah, I think 5 got hidden here, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, and 9. So this 159 is nothing but your, what is it? It refers to your Panapharam and Apoklimam, but it corresponds to the Trikonas. Okay. So the Trikonas are also important. And then of course you have these terminologies, which is after the Kendra you have a Panapharam, after Panapharam you have a Apoklimam, and then after that the Kendram again starts. So this again becomes relevant in some shlokas. The explanation is given what is the influence of each one, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now with these concepts, now let us look at the final topic before I move on to the last and then we close. This is Horaskanda's Griha Drishti. Okay. So now we are adding more complication. Let's take this person is in Karka. Okay. So same person, Karka. Okay. And I've placed the grahas in the same location. So the South Indian chart, this person who was born with Karka Lagna has Guru and Chandra in their Lagna. Okay. So again here in the North Indian chart, they have Guru Chandra. Then what else do they have? In Tula, they have Shani. So here also they have Tula with Shani. So basically you go like this, right? You go like the Ludo format. So this is the 4th one. Then they have Rahu and Dhanu. So again they have Rahu and Dhanu. Then they have Makar Mangal. They have Shukra and Meena. And in Mesha they have Surya and Buddha. Okay. Now so this is the 11th house. This is the 12th house. Okay. So now let's place some grahas. We've already placed the grahas. Now let's understand the graha drishti. So each graha influences not only the house that it's in a part of, it also has a drishti on certain other houses. So Mangal will have, I'll use a South Indian format to explain, because for me Graha Drishti is easier with South Indian format. So Mangal, it will be the exact opposite house on the other side. Okay, so Mangal will have influence. If it's on 7, it will have on 10 2. It will have 1, 2, 3. It will have the 3rd house from its position, and it will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6th position from itself. Okay, so Mangal's influence is on Surya and Buddha, its influences on Guru and Chandra, and its influences on the Simha Rashi where there is no Graha. So just looking at the house, you should not assume that there is no influence. Very often the drishti from some other graha's location could be influencing this. On top of that, there is maitritvam. So each graha has friendliness and enmity amongst each other. So certain grahas together will not be a good outcome. Certain grahas together will, right? So all that also have to take into consideration. Here I've taken Ketu and Rahu as example because it's a more recent example. Okay, so this is actually the chart of Sri Rama. So in the traditional depictions, you will not have Rahu and Ketu mentioned, but people have identified the Rahu Ketu position as well. So you're actually looking at Sri Rama's uh, Kundali, and here you can actually see and analyze what kind of life he would have had because of his position. Okay, so we looked at Mangal, right? So now let's look at Shani. So in Shani, it will have again, you do the calculation, it will be like a diagonal position on the other side, and it will be on the third house from itself, and then again 11th house from itself. Okay, then if you look at, I think this got shifted, it should be Guru. So with Guru, what happens is that Guru again has three impact. So it will impact one, two, three, four, fourth house. Then it will impact sixth house, and then the eighth house. Okay. So actually this has got shifted slightly. I'll correct it before I send it. But essentially this gives you an idea of how the grahas also impact each other. I've depicted the same thing again in the North Indian format. For me, the North Indian format, it's difficult to identify the drishtis easily. Each has its advantage, disadvantage. So I've included both. Okay. So with that, we close for the day. It was just an introduction into Jyotisham, also Hora Shastra, and hopefully it was interesting. I will get the answer to your question and I'll get back. You want to close with the Shanti Mantra? No? Okay. ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः के पुनर्मिलामः अग्रिम शनिवासरे. I will cover the other Vedangas. If possible, I'll cover everything in one go. But if not, we'll split it. Okay?
Sure, okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the listen.
Yeah. Bye.